So in this segment, we're going to be talking about the Owen Jones situation, him leaving the Labour Party. There's been a lot of criticism of him. I think a lot of stupid takes from people who really shouldn't be criticising him based on their record around elections and things they have said kind of before other elections. So it's a bit awkward when the people who say fall in line, and if you don't fall in line, you're a Tory enabler, said in previous elections that, don't vote Labour if you don't want to. It's a bit weird, that, isn't it? And we'll be going through some of that in a minute. So let's listen to what his logic is.
Crises like housing to show global leadership on the climate emergency and create the jobs of the future, and to not want to cheer on the mass slaughter of children and facilitate it.
That seems to be where I think over Gaza, I think that's where he's drawn his kind of line in the sand over it, which I can respect that.
The Tories are toast. They're finished. They're not coming back. They've destroyed themselves. It is over for them. So why would you want the same policies that led this country to catastrophe, just with different faces at the top?
And I know there's a lot of people who say, like, oh, Labour aren't going to do austerity and blah, 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 right? The Labour fiscal rules are the same as the Tories. So they've limited themselves in terms of borrowing. They've said they're not going to increase taxes. For the most part, they've limited themselves on taxes. The only ones they're going to do are get rid of the non-dom tax exemption and the private school VAT exemption, which they're still being a bit iffy on that anyways. But those are the two. And one of those is gone partially because the Tories have nicked it. That's it. Like, these are the most tax exemptions they've talked about. I know people are saying wait for the manifesto and blah, 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 but, they shouldn't be hyping up stuff either then if they're saying wait for the manifesto. They shouldn't be hyping up Labour's policies because they don't know what's going to be in the manifesto either. That's one of the dumb things.
We might disagree on this or that. Some might think Labour might change again in the future. Even if that's true, there's no chance of that happening without pressure from the outside.
Which is true. The only reason Labour would change is because of pressure in the polls from the ordinary person or an insurgency party. That's what did it to the Tories. The UKIP party and the Brexit party, that's what forced them to change, and forced them to change for the worse. Whereas if there is a genuine left-wing kind of alternative, that will force Labour to change for the better.
So I'm supporting a crowdfunder that bypasses all of those arguments. It will just back candidates on a pragmatic basis. Do they support the right policies? That's what matters. It bypasses the whole question about whether you vote Green or for someone else or join a political party or have a new political party. It's just about uniting everyone now who stands for the same thing. Now, we've got huge support out there for all the things I've talked about. It is a crisis of democracy that our political parties have conspired to shut you out if you believe in those things. And unless we can get our act together, then guess who will? When the whole Starmer government inevitably ends in tears. I'll tell you who. It's the far right. They're waiting in the wings.
And, he's right about that. When you look at the polling, right, you look at Reform Party are on the come up. And we saw this in 2016 as well with the UKIP party. The Reform Party are, chances are they might be able to replace the Tories. And that's a scary thought. And we've seen that in other countries where this is one of my mob professors, Glenn Daly. This is what he said, when capitalism fails, populism begins to take hold. It's one of the things he kind of said. And he's right about that. And this is what we're seeing happening across Europe. Capitalism is failing people and we're seeing populism take hold.
In Germany, when a government came to power with exactly the same sort of politics as Keir Starmer, the electorate have turned on them. But who's surging? The far right. In the US, Joe Biden is monstrously unpopular now and may well just end up handing the presidency to Donald Trump all over again. I've got to be honest, I think that's our future too, unless we get our act together. So I think we should vote Green or Independent unless you've got a Labour MP who stands for those things, like John McDonnell or Nadia Whittome or Zara Sultana. So please support the crowdfunder. The link is in the description.
So this is what I mean. And people accuse him of grifting for starting up this crowdfunder. But what he's not saying, don't vote for Labour. What he's saying is look at your individual candidate and base your vote on that. That's what his argument is. People have called him like, oh, he's trying to split the progressive vote. It's like, it's not his fault if your individual Labour candidate is washed. That's not his problem. If you look at his one is washed. It's Emily Thornberry, and we'll talk about her in a minute in that specific video. She is washed. Like, she's not good. She's not a good candidate. Some of the stuff she has said over the situation ongoing is really bad. And so, when you look at kind of the logic of certain people, right, if we go to kind of Mr. Data Man himself here, and I don't mean that as an insult. I mean, this is a guy who does his best to deal with facts and logic, unless it comes to Starmer. This is what he has to say about the Tories.
For a long time now, I've been saying that Labour's lead is not soft, and that I'm relaxed about the certainty of them forming a majority government after the next election. The real contest now is not changing the government, but Can we obliterate the Conservatives completely?
So this is the difference here. Like we know, chances are Labour are going to win a majority, but what people in kind of the Labour social crowd want is the annihilation of the Conservative Party without really thinking about what's going to replace them. That's one of the considerations people should really have, because if it's Reform UK, that's going to be very tricky, because a right-wing populist party are far more tricky to deal with than the Tories are a populist party, but the Reform UK party are far more kind of populist. They have more they try and appeal to working class voters a lot more. Kind of what Boris Johnson tried to do a bit more in 2019 when he talked about building hospitals and other things that would actually help the ordinary person. But we can see the logic of Owen Jones coincides with the logic of Phil Morehouse, which is the Tories are toast. It's over. The question is the size of the majority. So, people are calling him calling Owen Jones a Tory enabler because, effectively he's going against Labour, which will give the Tories more MPs when who cares if the Tories have 10 MPs or 20 or 30? That's it, they're finished. They will be one of the smaller parties in opposition. If we look at, I think, this is Owen Jones's MP here. This is the one where if he votes Labour, this is the person he would be electing. Some of the stuff she said, at the time especially, was really bad.
Do you think cutting off food, water and electricity is within international law?
I think that Israel has an absolute right to defend itself against terrorism.
That's not the question I asked.
It is an answer to the question that you've asked, and I think it's an appropriate one at this time.
So there's the get out of jail card, which is it's an appropriate one at this time, but there's never a reason to do collective punishment. Never. It's illegal for a reason.
I've always liked Emily. Always got on very, very well with Emily. I hope, got pissed with her, campaigned with her repeatedly.
So I mean, this is a guy, this is the insidious relationship between, I think, journalists and the media. I mean, journalists and politicians. You should not be hanging out with politicians if you're a journalist. You shouldn't. But it's clearly someone who he kind of cared for, I guess. And you can see what she said. She backed war crimes. That's it. It's done. So that's the We Deserve Better thing. I mean, you can donate to it if you want, I guess, but. Just donate. If you have a candidate you want to donate to, just donate to them directly, depending on the constituency you're in. Just vote with your conscience, because that's what these people pushed originally. You got Marina Perkis saying, I have a lot of respect for Owen Jones, but I cannot get behind this call to arms to split the left of centre vote. Sure, Labour have much to be desired, but anything that could lead to another 4 years of Tory rule is a risk we can't be taking. Here's what she said in 2019. The issue is as simple as people not knowing which parties are pro-Remain and which aren't. If you're Remain, be sure to vote either Lib Dem, Green, or TIG, right? So is that not splitting the vote? It's just silly. The people who are saying fall in line now are the same people back then who are saying, vote how you want to vote. Is crazy. You've got here Tansky criticising Labour, rightly so. Rightly so she's criticising them over them saying nice things about Thatcher, calling her a visionary. She says Labour need to stop praising Thatcher. Obviously in expletives, because that's how she operates. But then why is she criticising Labour? Is this not helping the Tories by her own logic? When she says stop criticising Labour, you're helping the Tories. That's what kind of her and her audience keep saying, right? So is that not what she's doing right here? It's crazy. And then, right, she gets mad. She gets mad at Stephen Flynn when Stephen Flynn says stuff like this.
Mr. Speaker, with his backbenchers looking for a unity candidate to replace him, which of the now numerous born-again Thatcherites on the Labour front bench does he believe best fits the bill?
He's funny. He's funny. And she's like, nice that he gave Sunak ammo to big himself up there. This is why I broadly don't like Flynn. He's a gift to the Tories on occasion. Stephen Flynn has no reason to help the Labour Party. Not really. It would help Scottish people, though. It would, if the Labour Party were in. But at the same time, Labour need to push policies that are going to help people in Scotland as well, as the rest of the Union, which I don't think they really are. But, if Labour say something stupid and the SNP then point it out, how are you going to get mad at the SNP? Surely you should be purely mad at Labour for giving them the ammunition. But, again, she's criticised Labour again, in several tweets here. So is it the case that we are Tory enablers if we criticise Labour? Because if that's the case, you shouldn't be criticising Labour here, regardless of what your thoughts on Thatcher are. It's just madness. This is the same tweet here. And this is what Phil said in 2019 regarding voting.
And subscribe to the channel. So first of all, what I'm not trying to do here is persuade anyone to vote against or for any particular party. If people would like to not vote Conservative or Brexit Party at the general election, if you're a citizen who can take part in those elections, then that would be fantastic. But beyond that, I'm not really going to say. If you are happy to vote for the Lib Dems, if Labour have turned you off, then that's fine, that's your choice. That's not what this is about. I'm just explaining why I will never vote for them.
So, you know, here you have a guy, you know, not being kind of full-heartedly supporting the Labour Party, saying if you don't want to vote for Labour, that's fine. You can vote Lib Dem or for, you know, one of the other kind of progressive parties. But I'm not going to do that. He's saying it's fine. You know, he's not saying, oh, if you don't vote tactically to vote your local Tory MP out, you're a Tory enabler. He's not saying that. What's changed in the last few years? Because arguably 2019 was a much more important election, because that's where we could have got a much softer Brexit. Really could have done. Because we weren't out of the EU then. That's where we could have got a much better result than the one we got. So this whole argument of, oh, everything's changed now, it's more important, this is the most important election ever, is garbage. 2019 was a far more important general election. So this is what I mean, like, these people now who are saying fall in line, vote Labour, vote tactically, or else you're a Tory enabler, they weren't saying this back then. I don't get it, guys. I don't. This is it's just stupidity on the highest levels. Because the internet exists, we can see what you've said, we can see what you have done. And you'll go to the main G here, which is Graham Hughes, right? This is Graham Hughes' Wikipedia page, right? He's cool enough to have a Wikipedia page. Now, Graham Hughes, right, a vocal advocate for remaining in the EU, for the People's March and all that kind of stuff, he ran against a Labour candidate in 2017. So Graham Hughes sent a message to his MP, Stephen Twigg, threatening to stand against him in an upcoming election if he voted with the Conservative Party to activate Article 50. Graham Hughes, true to his word, he ran against him in the election, winning 0.7% of the vote. You can argue he lives in a safe seat or whatever, but this is a guy who not only told people, you know, told people not to vote for Labour, he ran against the Labour candidate. He ran against Labour in that seat. So tell me, who are the Tory enablers then? Because if it's the case that people like myself are a Tory enabler for saying, I'm not too sure on Labour, I'm not sure if I'm going to vote for them. If I'm a Tory enabler, these guys were Tory enablers in 2019, and they have no leg to stand on. Absolutely no leg to stand on when they criticise people who say they have misgivings about the Labour Party. Absolutely nothing they can say. Because you can talk about Labour and the anti-Semitism stuff, and I've done that in the past, and, you know, the abhorrent complaint system, the fact that racism was not taken seriously against people. That's fine. I can 100% accept that. There was a lot of mistakes that Corbyn made, but when we look at the Labour Party currently, this is a party that backed war crimes.
Do you think cutting off food, water and electricity is within international law?
I think that Israel has an absolute right to defend itself against terrorism.
That's not the question I asked.
It is an answer to the question that you've asked, and I think it's an appropriate one at this time.
So, you know, people draw their red lines where they want to. This is a red line for a lot of people. That, you know, you can't be one of those people who said, oh, vote for progressive parties, you don't have to vote for Labour or whatever, and now turn around and say you have to vote for Labour. You have no moral leg to stand on. And, you know, ironically, the person who I respect the most in this situation is Femi, despite his bad EU takes on the single market, saying we can rejoin it. He actually has a lot of good takes outside of that, which is very surprising.
The ideal scenario is not a huge majority for the Labour Party, because Owen Jones is right about this.
They're just after a big majority, so they've got absolute power and they can do anything they want and no one can stop them.
That's what I mean. Like, guys like Phil want the annihilation of the Tory party. That's why they see anyone offering criticisms of Labour as Tory enablers, because they want to see the complete destruction of that party. That's where he's coming from. That's where he runs into trouble, because he keeps, you know, he's coming off the idea that let's just get rid of the party as much as possible. So when people offer criticisms of Labour or say vote for other parties, he's saying, oh, you're helping the Tories, when they're really not.
Can't trust them with that power.
Our best shot of getting the change in this country that we actually need is a hung parliament, where no party has an overall majority and Labour has to work with the other parties like the Greens, the Lib Dems, the SNP and some independents in order to get anything done. So for me, the most important thing is just make sure that you and everybody you know actually votes. Look at tactical voting sites like stopthetories.vote so that you know what the tactical choice is to get the Tories out. Some of you will vote tactically to make sure you keep the Tories out, and some of you won't. And if that means more seats for the Greens, I'm so totally cool with that. We don't need to be at each other's throats, because we're all going to need to work together after the election. Which is why, once again, despite my history with Owen Jones, I'm agreeing with him. Just like when after he finally came on board with opposing Brexit, I put the past aside and stood shoulder to shoulder with the guy. And let's go back to my favourite thing in his video.
To vote Green or Independent unless you've still got a Labour MP who offers an actual alternative to the catastrophic Tory policies which have brought this country to the edge of ruin.
Because he's not saying don't vote Labour at all, because he's telling you that there are Labour candidates and MPs that you should be voting for, and he includes Clive Lewis among them. Labour's
Clive Lewis is probably one of the best Labour MPs, honestly.
biggest spokesperson for a fair voting system. And I really appreciate that inclusion. It builds functional trust. And one final thing that he's definitely right about.
If we don't get our act together, when it all ends in tears for Starmer's Labour...
Yeah, this is stuff I've covered. So you can see this is a really good take from Femi here, which is, you know, to get the policies that you actually want, which is he wants proportional representation. The only way you're not going to get that through a Labour majority or a Labour supermajority. That's not going to happen. It's not in their interest to do it. Why would you get rid of the system that's basically giving you all the power you have in a majority? It doesn't make sense. And this is the logic, like, certain people just fail to understand completely. And it baffles me that they think this way. But again, I think they're so clouded by their hatred of the Tory party, they can't see past it. They can't see past it. And, you know, they hate the Tory party so much, and I get why. And that's fine, but given the history these characters have and the things that they have said in the past, especially in that 2019 general election, I'm not a big Corbyn stan, I'm not. I did have issues with him, and, you know, one of the reasons I kind of made my channel was to criticise people like him as well as the Tories, because, you know, they deserve criticism, and I think we should be open about the kind of misgivings we have around certain politicians. But, you know, for these people to have the history they've had, the things that they have said, you know, and then to come out and say, oh, if you don't vote Starmer no matter what, you're a Tory enabler. But these are people who, under their own logic, a few years ago were Tory enablers. So I genuinely, I don't get it, guys. It's very confusing, don't you think? You would think that these people would have some humility and say, look, okay, I was wrong back then, but, you know, right now we need to get the Tories out. We need to be humble. You know, you see so many takes of people on Twitter saying, oh, we need to get the Tories out no matter what. You know, vote for Labour, vote for whoever to get them out. And these people in 2019 said, oh, I can't vote for Labour. I can't vote for Labour. I'm going to vote for the Lib Dems. Even though it wasn't tactical for them to do so, because they hated Corbyn. Which, you know, that's their prerogative. We live in a democracy. You choose who you vote for. But vote shaming people doesn't work. You saying you're a Tory enabler if you don't vote for Labour doesn't work. So it's just baffling, you know. Vote Labour or don't. That's your choice. Just be registered to vote. That's one of the key points I think Femi's pointing to, and what Owen Jones pointed to. Register to vote, and whatever you decide, that's up to you. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. At the election, I'm going to be determined to tell people not who to vote for. I'll tell you who I'll vote for, who I'm looking at, who appeals to me. But, you know, if you do have a progressive Labour candidate, vote for them. If that's what you want to do, back them. If that's what you want to do. But if you live in a constituency with an MP who has said cutting off fuel and water is okay, that's, yeah, and if you want to support that, that's also up to you. We do live in a democracy at the end of the day. It's not the most democratic system because we're stuck between all the clowns at a circus, but that's the system we're in right now. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And hopefully the clown show won't continue much longer.